Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're taking a look at Ultimate X-Men Omnibus Volume 1, as you can clearly see here, and I went with the Wolverine cover. Here is the spine of the book featuring Ultimate Magneto, and here is the back of the book that showcases the issues and says, thrillingly new, shockingly different. Alright, so first of all, what does this omnibus collect? Well, it collects Ultimate X-Men 1 through 33 and Ultimate War 1 through 4. Alright, so first of all, being Ultimate X-Men, this takes place in Marvel's Ultimate Universe. If you don't know what that is, it's a separate Marvel reality that contains reimaginations of some of the most prominent Marvel characters, and my understanding is that the Ultimate Universe was created as a way to make some of those characters extremely accessible for new readers who didn't want to get bogged down by decades of continuity in Marvel's 616 universe. I also actually think this universe helped save Marvel from bankruptcy. Ultimate Spider-Man is probably the most successful comic from there. Fantastic Four is pretty decent for the most part too, and I never read Ultimate X-Men before, and as a big X-Men fan now, I was super curious to see if this would be good. Well, I've read it now, and I've got kind of mixed thoughts on it. With any reimaginations of such a large cast of characters, I guess there will naturally be pros and cons. Overall, though, I did enjoy my time reading this. It's not super deep or nuanced, but it's a fun comic book adventure with characters that we get only glimmers of like deeper exploration, but that's fine, I guess. My big critique, and it's hardly a critique, it's just the way they chose to do the characters, but I didn't like how Magneto was personified in here. I also wasn't a big fan of his design, but that's not the end of the world. What was weird was his acceptance of cannibalism or something, but okay, sure, whatever. You do you, Ultimate Universe. They make really weird choices in here sometimes. We also start off this omnibus with this big Magneto versus Charles Xavier ideological, then actual war storyline with the Sentinels and stuff too, and it in theory should have been really great, but it fell a little flat for me there. I think this omnibus doesn't start off too strong. The art and displays of power were really fun though, so it's not all a waste of time, and I guess it introduced us to the reimaginations of the mutant factions in here in a fairly concise way, and that's pretty important for the book. The book and the story itself is a little dark, but not too heavy on that stuff immediately. I was fairly engaged the whole way through, but ultimately, it's a little pun for you, the way that Millar writes dialogue doesn't really resonate with me, so a lot of the book just felt surface level because of that. Now for hardcore X-Men fans, I think a lot of it will feel familiar while also feeling completely and drastically different at the same time, which is a little weird. I'm going to sound negative and like an X-Men traditionalist, but a ton of the interpretations I'm not the biggest fan of in here, like Jean, Storm, Nightcrawler, Magneto, and a few others. They just felt too different, but not in an interesting enough way for me to really care about it that much. It's worth mentioning as well, I noticed a lot of little errors with cropping or artwork in this book, and it feels like there wasn't a lot of editorial oversight here in the design, maybe. I don't know if that's an omnibus specific issue or if it's from the original run, but I just wanted to point that out for you all. For some reason, and this is likely a personal style thing, but comics from the early 2000s, and this was in 2001 when this book launched, just always feel like they age way worse to me than comics from any other decade do. I don't know why that is, but back to talking about the characters, because I think that's the most interesting thing in this book. The story itself is pretty typical X-Men stuff. It's funny because I don't normally like Beast, but I think he's one of the more well-written characters in here, and they do the more human Beast, and then they evolve him into the blue-furred Beast via some Weapon X experience, which was actually a pretty cool storyline. I like that one. He also dates Storm, which just kind of inherently feels wrong, but they did actually have some cute moments in there and some nice little pieces of chemistry. Wolverine is in here too, of course. He's fine. He's originally a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and converts over to the X-Men, which I thought was a cool take. I find his relationship in here with Jean Grey a little odd, and it feels off, but that also might just be a preference thing. Iceman is fun too. He's pretty different from a lot of the Iceman readings that I've seen, but that has a lot to do with his age in here, and I think it works fine. I really hate that it seems like I'm sounding so negative about this book, but the truth is that I'm probably just being really, really hypercritical with my extra magnifying glass on this book because I love the X-Men so much. I think for most people, they're going to just very simply enjoy this. I don't think you're going to be thinking about it a lot past when you read it. I don't think it's going to stay with you for a long time. It might for those who have nostalgia factor going on. If you read this when, sort of it was originally coming out or in its early inceptions, whatnot, then in that instance, you probably still think about this and are very happy that this is printed today. But as someone who's very spoiled to have gotten and read in the past 2.5 or so years all of Claremont's run, a bunch of other amazing X-Men runs, modern X-Men with the Krakoa era. All those feel so much better than this, and that sounds mean. It really shouldn't be, comparing them like that, pitting them against each other, since this is kind of its own really separate thing. But to me, it's like, okay, I've read this now. Would I want to keep reading this, or would I want to go back to like Claremont X-Men, or would I want to go back to Krakoa era X-Men, or would I want to go back to like Morrison X-Men even? And specifically in the instances of Krakoa and Morrison, I think you could argue too, and I think it's a very, very strong argument, that those are pretty good reimaginations of the X-Men idea itself, even if they are within main continuity. It's an elevation, whereas this reimagination doesn't feel like it's moving forward. It just feels like we're kind of treading the same water, but with a different stroke, I guess. But again, maybe it's not fair of me to look at it that way and critique it for that, because I don't know if that was really the intention to be a necessary elevation of the X-Men. I think it's more so just like Millar wanted to do his own thing with the X-Men that was basically X-Men, but just he wrote X-Men. Probably overall, I would describe this story as serviceable and fun at points and engaging, like I said, most of the way through, but also not too impactful really, and not the best use of the comic book medium, I think. Although I should say that there is a lot of fantastic artwork in here, and there's also a lot of different artists who worked on this book who probably in 2001 when this came out weren't that big a deal as they are now, but like looking through the list and the table of contents in the beginning, I was like, oh wow, it's him. Oh, and it's him. Oh, look, it's Chris Bacalo. He's great. So on and so forth. So worth it for looking through the art too, I think. But importantly, what do you guys think about this book if you've read it? If not, are you planning on picking it up? I would love to hear everyone's thoughts. Maybe I'm way off the mark on this one. With that being said, please have a fantastic rest of your day, and don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks, guys.